Welcome back to Let's Run With That. I'm Jill. Today we're going to do a little bit of an unboxing slash review maintenance kind of deal with HV8 Rotary table from Vevor. I just purchased this thing and it arrived within a few days. Pretty impressed so far. So let's get going. Well, we got good packaging so far. Let's see what's in the box. Let's see how bad things might be. No suspicions of bad things to come. Wow, that is a big package. First of all, the HV8 rotary table is a 70-pound piece of kit, so it's not a toy to be feathered around with. First things first, the packaging is well oiled. It doesn't smell bad. That's nice. Okay, so it's a big piece of gear. Let's grab this thing, take it out. Jesus. Yeah, super heavy. Okay, so don't hurt yourself when doing this. I want to see if there's more stuff in the box. More stapler 3, a little Allen wrench, instruction manual, and a packing inspection type report. Completely useless for me. All right. So now, put stuff aside here, and without even unpacking this thing, it looks nice. But let's not be too premature. Okay, first things first, you unpack this onto your table. Wow, that is oily. But it's not the nasty old stuff we used to got. Very nice. Now this handle here is quite large. And it won't sit on your table, right? So it actually sticks out. So that's something interesting. Wow, that is heavy. Whew. Okay, done. So let's see what we got here. Perhaps that was not a more stapler 3. Right, let's look at this a little closer. That is a handle. That goes over here. Aha, okay. I thought there was a more stapler that came with this, but there isn't. And you know what? That's fine by me. Okay, so I'll screw that in later. And I guess the first thing I should do is wipe off the oil. Let's do that. Okay, as you can tell, that's it is sort of sticky oil, so they'll have to be cleaned up with a degreaser. Because the lint is just sticking to this thing. So I guess before I go any further, I should I'm going to move this so that the handle doesn't stick on the table. Yep. Okay, good. All right, so the first thing I want to do here, I should probably bring you in a little bit closer. Okay, one of the things that really interests me when I get new gear is to see whether or not there's burrs everywhere and whatnot. Now, the first thing I see here is that this is a really nicely machined surface, but those grooves here, that they do need to be deburred. So that is without a doubt something that must happen. Probably wouldn't slice my hand open, but it's sharp. Okay, let's move this a bit. Down here, these slots, are quite sharp as well, but the surface finish is fantastic. So, this is just obviously they got to cut corners somewhere to reduce the price. This here cost me $330 Canadian, and that included the taxes and free delivery. And the delivery were like 4 days to deliver which is impressive because I'm in Halifax and everything has to come from either Ontario or whatever. So for $330, an 8-inch rotary table, number one, is unbelievable. I cannot possibly make it for that price. So, you know, that explains why they cut some corners. Okay? Clearly. All right, let's put that back up. Let's look at the back. And I'll bring you a little bit closer again. Now, on the underneath of this surface, it is I'm telling you, this is phenomenal grinding job. It looks great. They've actually taken the time to cut off all these, so that this is chamfered, basically, beveled, whatever you want to call it. Same thing on the inside here, but this is all sharp, so is this as well. So no huge deal, but it's something that needs to be done, because you don't want the burrs to stick up when you're going to put on the surface to change how parallel it is and how flat it is, whatnot, right? So that's something to consider. Nothing huge though. I mean, the surface finish is fantastic. Now, having a nice surface finish is nice, but obviously that's not what makes the gizmo work. So you've got two locking pins here, and they move freely. The mechanism is made to clamp down on this lip. See, so as you turn your locking mechanism, it actually squeezes things down, so there's no inward pressure. Remains to be seen how much play happens, you know, with the parallelism when you clamp it down. There's actually, you know, what's holding this inside? Is there a bearing and whatnot? So we'll have to unpack that to have a look. But the locks work quite well. Now remember, when you use a rotary table, there's no need to crank down, because when you do, you distort metal. So that's something to think about. Move the camera a touch. Okay, so I mean, obviously the most important part of that is whether or not all of this mechanism turns nicely. And it's smooth enough, and it turns well. No issue there. You can see the head turn, the rotary table turning on it. As I turn it, there's no hang-ups in there and whatnot. Now, is it possible that it's dirty inside? I don't know. I'm gonna have to crack it open, and I would recommend you do that anyway, simply because the most important part in there is their worm gear, and you want to make sure that is turning freely, that there is no debris in there that's going to damage it. So why not do that right off the bat? I mean, this is not a $10,000 rotary table, so you can't expect miracles. I'm going to do that in this review. Now, when I looked at the dials here, dials are really well made. It's got a satin finish, and everything is clear and legible, very nicely done. Now, this here is an eccentric mechanism, and it's made in order to free this rotary table. Okay, so this is the locking mechanism here. As you can tell, I'm not all brains today. So when you do that, when you turn it to the off position, first you unlock, off position, and then it disengages the worm from the gear. So the idea of that is that you can turn the table freely. So when you re-engage, you want to make sure that it's going to engage in the gear without, you know, being off. So when you do that, clearly, if you don't go far enough, you could actually damage the worm in there, and that'd be a real problem, right? So this lever here This is on the off position. So when you come back, and turn that off a bit. See here, it doesn't engage correctly. So keep moving your table until you're able to go completely vertical in that thing. Then lock it down. Don't have to crank down on this. And that's it. Now your worm is re-engaged. Okay, so for anybody that's a newbie that's gonna buy one of these things, those are important things to remember about your rotary table, okay? Like if you can really mess things up, you mess up that worm gear, then it's game over. Essentially, without going into the how it works, the degrees, hours, minutes, that sort of thing, and seconds, so far, this is nice. Okay, so here, I can zoom you in. This is where we have the needle. This one is set nicely. I actually saw a video a while back and somebody wasn't pleased because it wasn't perfectly vertical. Honestly, it's not a huge deal. There's oiling points here, here, where else? Oh, and then another one around the table. Let me unlock this so I can show you. And there's another oiling point right here. So those are good features. The detents work nicely. They're not too tough, but not too loose. This one is a little, spring could be improved perhaps. Something I'll have to keep an eye on. Don't want debris to get in there. Okay, let me get a Morse taper and we'll see how that fits. As I said earlier, this particular unit is a Morse taper 3. This is a Morse taper 2 with a convert or an adapter sleeve. So this is Morse taper 3. Put it in there. Fits very nice. No slack. It's nice. I like it. The inside of the board looks great. No issue there. So the finish on everything, it looks pretty good. I haven't, other than these edges that need to be deburred, no big deal. All right, so I guess this means we have to take this thing apart. Let's do it. Okay, so to get anywhere with this, you need to take off these lockdowns, because without doing that, you're not going to be able to remove the table. So we'll do that. Both sides. And of course there's two. And there's a nice layer of oil in there. It's nothing drastic, but I'll clean it as I rebuild this thing. Okay, so that's done. And now, of course, there should be something holding it from below. So let's have a quick look at that. All right. So essentially, you've got an Allen key holding this screw. They provide the Allen key, which is nice. Okay, so that's a number 4 Allen key. All right, wow. There we go. There. Now, once you unlock this key, then it's a matter of simply spinning this here threaded washer. The key is only there to lock it in place, right? Or the screw, should I say. Clean that out. So I'm going to show you why it works. There's a slot here, you know, it goes halfway into this nut, and then this little screw presses, creates pressure, splits it open, and holds the nut in place. Okay, so at this point, this thing should be free. Now, as I mentioned before, this is a pretty heavy table, right? 70 pounds. So don't mess around. Put it down. Make things as easy as possible for yourself, okay? So this comes loose right off the bat. Put it down. Okay. As you can see, there's some really nice grease. This is good stuff. And you can see the ways. The ways are oiled. I don't feel any sharp ends except for this, so I'm going to take care of that as well. Check the gears. I see a little piece of straw or whatever the heck that is. So make sure there's no debris in there because you don't want any problems later on. Okay, so that's good. Put that aside. Now, looking at the inside of this thing here, let's take a clean cloth and let's see if there's any dirt in there. Because this is cast iron, as you know. So this is really good. I mean, let's face it, this is a piece of machinery. It's not dirty. I do not see any debris in there at all. Now, the only thing that really matters is the worm gear. So let me bring you in so you can see the worm. All right, so now we have clear view of the worm gear, or the worm. One's a gear, the other one's a worm. This is the worm. All right, so let's keep turning it. What I'm looking for is to see any large pieces of debris, any nicks, any breaks, any cracks. And honestly, I see none of those things. This here turns very freely. The whole mechanism inside works well. Now, in here, and I'm not certain that you guys can see this, but right there, see here, this is a truss bearing, and it's a ball truss bearing. Needle truss bearing would be nicer, but hey, you know, this is not going to spin 100 miles an hour, so that's pretty good. Now there is movement, and of course it has to move up to a point. Lock this in place here. Okay, so the reason, now if this is unlocked here, remember this is for the eccentric bolt, right? Currently it's at the off position. So let's put it back on here. We'll lock it again. And there is no up, down, sideways movement when I try to rock the dial. Zoom you out a touch here. Right, so I'm doing this to see if there's any play, and there is none. Obviously, this is surprisingly well made. Now, okay, turns really great. Now I can hear a rubbing noise, and I think it's in here. Yeah, so that's okay. I'll probably take this off, add a little touch of grease, and that'll probably take care of that little rubbing. Honestly, it does not affect anything at all. When it was turned, it was just probably a little, who knows? But it just makes a slight rubbing sound on the interior of this sleeve here. So again, no big deal whatsoever. All right. So there's nothing else for this thing. Now here, I'm touching the bore. Yeah, it's a little rough. You know, it was surface ground on the inside of this thing. So that's interesting. You know, the casting itself had some pores. So there is a quadrant of approximately an inch out of this whole thing. That is a little surface roughness, but I don't feel anything poking up. which is probably why this thing turns so nicely. Okay, so let me put it back together. First thing I'm going to do is put some whey oil on here. Now they didn't have something that was quite that thick, but this is the whey oil I use on my South Bend 13. And if it made that thing last 75 years, it shouldn't do anything harm for this. Now there's a groove in here where the oiler will put oil into. And I'll bring you again to look at, there's oil grooves on the underside of the table where it meets this. Here, I'll show you. You see the oil grooves. That's to allow the oil to move laterally against the surface of this thing. The grease is pristine, no issue there whatsoever. Before I do anything further though, I am going to take a diamond file, move this aside here, take a diamond file and just lightly touch the outside, the circumference of this table here. Okay, so here's a diamond file. This is what they look like. And this particular one here is 220 grit. It's flat. And I got that from KBC. These things are phenomenal. When you start doing things with your surface grinders, if you have one, you'll still get some very slight burrs, just like they have here on this piece, this rotary table. And that's all you need, is a little bit of a touch up and take off the last burrs. The last thing you want is to slice yourself open as you're working. Okay, it really doesn't take much. This is a beautiful surface. Okay. Almost there. This is a large circumference, of course. Almost. Okay, that's it. A little quick wipe. Great. What about here? Nothing. Nope. Looks good. No problem at all. Okay, so now put this back in carefully. Watch your fingers when you do this. And you want this to fall. The gears have to go into the worm, of course, right? So I'm gonna loosen this up here and turn this to off. There. So now it's back in. So when you do that, disengage the dial so that you don't have to try to seat the gears correctly and perhaps damage them on the, Now, of course, this is not turning as easily using whey oil, but whey oil is much better. It is made for this kind of application. Okay. We'll reintroduce this thing here. Just gotta find that sweet spot. There. That's it. So, as I said, make sure you do this correctly, otherwise you may damage your worm gear later on, okay? All right, great. So these slots, they're pretty nice actually. No issue. These are a little bit rough around the edges, so just do this like that and see if it makes a difference. Yeah, it just cuts the corner, the edges of those, because it was surface ground. Okay. Doesn't need a lot. I mean, You could probably leave that as is, to be honest. I'm just being picky. Okay. So a few minutes ago, I was showing you how this was making noise. And I know it's not overly loud, but what I believe is happening here, the sound originates when the friction occurs between these two plates. Okay, so this is here is a little bit of gear oil for my lathe. There. And let's see. Oh, much better. Okay, I'm going to put some on the shaft. The shaft is dry. Wonderful. That's all it took. So if you get this, I mean, it's not a huge deal, right? We're talking about a drop of oil. Okay. So all I gotta do is retighten this. That's it. It doesn't have to be super snug. Okay, I could have added a little bit more oil. I'm gonna do that right now. There's no point messing around. There. That's it. Honestly, there's nothing else to do in this thing. It's bang on the money. So the next thing we'll have to check is whether or not there play in the table when we either lock it down, move it around, that sort of thing, right? Okay, so here's a quick unscientific test. It's on my welding table, but hey, you know, as long as nothing moves, it's all right. Okay, so let's move this dial. This is a 1/1000th of an inch Meditoyu dial indicator. And as I turn the table around, there is no movement. Now this is a very smooth dial indicator. Okay, keep trucking. Now for the purposes of milling, this would be pretty nice. I haven't seen any movement at all. The surface is super smooth, so it's well ground. Yeah, I'm happy with that. No movement so far. Okay, so let's see if I can. Oh yeah, I said I would use the clamps and see if we have any kind of movement. Let's try that. Okay, so not a huge concern, but you want to know if you're going to clamp down your table, if it's going to change the parallelism of your table. So I'm not going crazy here because honestly, you don't. Here's the thing about tightening down the locks on any of your machinery. You do not have to tighten overly hard. All right, you just don't. Okay, no movement at all. That is great. Try to use the handle here, nothing. Wow. Okay, Vevor, you got my vote so far. All right. One of the features you may like is that this rotary table comes with these locating pins, and comes with the little bolts that put them in as well. Now they are case hardened, and they're quite tight, so I had to do a little bit of filing, perhaps like 2 or 3 thousandths of an inch just to get them in. Now there's some for the bottom, there's 2 for the bottom, and well, or side, whatever you want to call it. So there's 4 that come all together. The other thing that it comes with that I failed to notice earlier is this little knob that goes onto your main spinning wheel. And you say, why is that here? Well, look at this. If you want to do some fine adjustments, this is really nice to have. Oddly enough, never would have thought of that, but yeah, like if you just want to use this, you know, like not quite so easy to do a fine adjustment, but if you do this, all of a sudden you're able to adjust the dial a lot more precisely where you want to have it. So those locating pins are nice. These particular ones fit perfectly in my RF30 mill. Mine's a PDM 30 from King, but they're all the same, and so that is a nice feature to have. Now, something else which is perhaps not so great is that, look at this, right? So these holes, as wide as they are, they just don't allow for you to put a bolt in there into your slots. When the table is sitting on its horizontal side, you can then remove this locating pin here, and you're able to clamp down your rotary table using normal T-nuts, right? And it's located already. So that is a really nice feature. But I'm gonna remove these two here and see if these bolt holes allow us to align with the T-slots. Okay, I've taken the alignment pins out, and sure enough, the holes line up very nicely so that you can put T-nuts here and tighten it down to your milling table. So that's very nice. But unfortunately, you won't be able to do the locating part on this thing. So the locating is going to have to happen here or across your piece of material, whatever you're doing. Now, what I intend to do, or what I hope to do, is to put this rotary table on and leave it on while my vise is also here. I saw a video by Joe Pye the other day, and that's what he does. So let's see if it'll actually fit on our mill drills. All right, here we go. That's gonna work out just fine. Okay. Well, that was one sure way to force me to clean my milling table, I'll tell you, and my vise. But hey, thanks guys for pressuring me into doing it. So there you go. That'll leave plenty of room to do the work that I need to do around here without having to, having to store that thing or move it around incessantly. And when I need to, then I'll just do it. But in the meantime, I should be able to use my mill the way I've always used it. So there you go. That's my review for you guys. I hope it was useful. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment or send me an email, whatever. Always like to hear from you. So please like and subscribe, and take care. Bye-bye.